Buried as a traitor, remembered as the death that didn't end him. The war was ending, but for Captain Thomas Cain, peace was never coming. On a rain-soaked morning in 1864, soldiers found his body in a ravine with a bullet wound in the back. No weapon and no uniform insignia. The Union Army rode it up fast. Desertion in hostile territory, possible defection, case closed. They buried him in unmarked ground beneath a splintered board that read, "Traitor, no ceremony." Why, no prayers, just shame. But here's what the report didn't say. Cain was seen just hours earlier diving into Confederate territory. Not to escape, but to rescue. Private Elijah Boone, a black soldier left behind after a failed flank. Boone had survived. Cain hadn't. The command buried the body and then buried the truth. Boone was transferred and silenced, and Cain's name was scrubbed from the rolls. The war ended weeks later, but Cain's battle was just beginning. A soldier who wouldn't let it go. 10 years passed. Samuel Beck, once a lowly private under Cain's command, now a crippled farmer, had tried to forget, but he couldn't. Cain had saved his life twice, and when the war ended, Beck buried his medals and kept only one thing: a copy of Cain's field notes. Haunted him because the notes didn't match the official reports. Cain had documented failures, cruelty, and illegal orders, especially those signed by Colonel Jasper Wilds, a man who rose in rank after Cain's death. Night Beck visited the grave and saw that word, traitor. Something broke inside him. He wrote letters, traveled town to town, and met other veterans. Some he remembered Cain. Others had heard rumors. A few warned him to leave it alone, but Beck found Elijah Boone, now an old man with a busted leg and a broken heart. Boone told the truth. Cain had carried him out of hell. He owed him everything, and they'd left him to rot under a lie. The journal that could burn a General Boone still had it. Cain's last journal is water-damaged but legible, filled with sketches, names, coordinates, and orders. Cain disobeyed because they would have killed civilians. Orders that protected black soldiers from suicide missions. Orders signed by Wilds that Cain challenged. Cain wasn't a deserter. He was a whistleblower. Beck sent pages to the St. Louis Ledger, the only paper with guts. A week later, they ran a headline: Union Hero or Forgotten Traitor. The Cain controversy, lit a fire. Veterans stepped forward and families of the men Cain had saved sent letters. Even Confederate soldiers testified. One swore he saw Cain drag Boone to safety under fire. But with every page Beck sent, more pressure came back. His barn burned down. He was followed and warned. Wilds was still alive and still protected. A senator named Ambrose Lowcock, a quiet abolitionist, stepped in. He'd lost his son in the war, and said Cain reminded him of the kind of man they needed back then, and the kind they still lack now. He pushed Congress to investigate quietly. Of course, no one wanted headlines like Union hanged its own hero, but Cain's truth wouldn't stay buried. In 18,766, the War Department held a rare posthumous tribunal, private, unofficial, but real. Beck, Boone, and 3 other soldiers testified. Colonel Wilds refused to attend. Cain's journal was authenticated, and his letters were read aloud. In one Cain wrote, "If I am to die, let it not be for obeying orders that kill conscience. Let it be for disobeying the wrong ones." The military lawyers argued it didn't matter. Cain still violated orders. He crossed into enemy lines without clearance, but the tribunal wasn't unanimous. An officer said, "What is the value of discipline if it demands a man turn his back on his soul?" They reached a conclusion but refused to make it public. Beck received the letter in a cold envelope, unsigned. Captain and Cain acted in defense of life, not in dereliction of duty. Charges were exaggerated. No further inquiry will be pursued. No medal, no public reversal. Just quiet absolution. Beck didn't wait for permission. He had Cain's body exhumed with Boone's help. He bought a new grave plot in his hometown. Dozens of veterans came. Even a former Confederate officer stood with them, hat removed. They carved a headstone. Captain Thomas Cain, condemned by command, honored by conscience, buried as a traitor, remembered as a hero. The crowd was small. No cameras, no headlines. But the truth had roots now. Schools in Missouri began teaching Cain's story, and and churches spoke his name when preaching moral courage. And the word traitor faded, replaced by a deeper one: sacrifice. Beck died a year later on his nightstand with a folded flag and a photo of Cain. Some said he died with a smile. If you like my content and want to reach out to more, please like, share, and subscribe.